Hello, and welcome back to the Audible Finish, where we discuss the week gone by in the world of wrestling. I'm your host, Dimitri Kalos, and alongside me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, Thanasi. Welcome, Thanasi.
Salutations and peace to you, Dimitri.
In this week's episode, we review the events from WWE, including a World Heavyweight Championship match featuring Jinder Mahal that was actually good. And we also saw CM Punk call out Cody Rhodes for a face-to-face chat next week on Raw. What will they have to say to each other? Later on, we'll also talk about what happened in AEW as their world champion Samoa Joe successfully defeated his first challenger in Hook. What's that going to lead to moving forward in the world title picture with guys like Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page circling around the champion? If you are enjoying the podcast and have a moment, please like, share, and subscribe. On that note, let's dive right into the weekly content, and we're going to start off with SmackDown. Thanasi, you have the con.
Well, Dimitri, my first talking point is about the women's division, but just before I get onto that, I'll note that the LWO took on Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza, with the heels getting a dirty win. However, although that was the opening match, I think the more interesting talking point that I wanted to raise with you is on the topic of the Women's Royal Rumble. Now, in this match, the second match of the evening on SmackDown, Bianca Belair defeated Bayley. And I wanted to discuss some fantasy booking for the damage control combustion that interacts with the Royal Rumble. What do you think? So, I suppose on the topic of the Women's Royal Rumble, my personal thought is that Bayley should be the one to win the Royal Rumble. And I think we should have a bit of a Batista-like conflict where the group are encouraging her, and even she seems somewhat on the same page with them to switch brands and go to take on the other brand's champion at WrestleMania so they can have factional dominance. But then perhaps at the last minute, at the contract signing or something like that, she turns on her group who have been slowly pushing her to the wayside, in fact. And I think that would be the storyline culmination for this whole damage control scenario. Do you agree? Do you think that someone else should be looking at the Royal Rumble on the women's side? What do you reckon?
It's an interesting thing you raise, because of the fact that a lot of the men's side with the Rumble has been very concerned with the Raw people, the Raw challengers. There is something to be said about the beauty of balance. And so for the women's side, giving it to the SmackDown if that's how it's going to play out. Because I think no one really expects a SmackDown men's wrestler to actually win. Because all the shouts are saying guys like CM Punk, guys like Seth Rollins, even a smoky shout like a Drew McIntyre, like a lot of the options are the Raw guys. So I would like to see it, and I think Bayley is a very good option because it's someone who is established but hasn't actually won this sort of match before. So it would still be fresh.
That's right. And if you look at the list of previous Royal Rumble winners, they actually compose the list of people that you would potentially see as credible victors, but they're just not there for the storyline, except for Becky Lynch. But I mean, you look at Becky Lynch 2019, Asuka in 2018, Charlotte Flair 2020, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley was last year, wasn't she? Yeah, she was.
Rare Replay was last year. The year
So
before
these,
was Ronda Rousey, but we don't
and
have to remember that.
Ronda Rousey as well. There's no one, however, there whom we can elevate to a maiden world championship status. So we have to look at people that are already established. And that's how I've landed on Bayley for this one. Continuing on with the SmackDown review, however, the Street Profits and Bobby Lashley cut an in-ring promo calling out the authors of Pain and Karrion Kross, but we're going to have to wait a lot longer for that confrontation to manifest. Carmelo Hayes and Austin Theory got off to a banger of a match, which very unfortunately ended in a no contest referee stoppage. Austin tried to do his Spanish fly from the middle rope maneuver, but the boys couldn't complete their rotation fully, and it ended up with both of them actually spiking themselves. So we hope they'll be better soon because it looked pretty nasty. It didn't look like a shoot. It didn't look like a work. it did look like a botch. So we hope that they're going to be well enough soon, potentially to both be in the Royal Rumble, really. And in the main event of the evening, the big talking point of the night, LA Knight and AJ Styles teamed up to take on Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa. Initially, this was going to be a six-man with Randy Orton and a mystery bloodline third partner. But even though they were teasing that third mystery partner all night, where they ended up was Jimmy and Solo attacked Randy on the entrance ramp to make it just a 2-on-2 tag. And in the close of the match, Randy Orton actually emerged from the back, recovered to tag in, hit the RKO, and win the match for the baby faces. Post-match, the three number one contenders utterly obliterated Jimmy and Solo with a big three-person power bomb through the table a la Shield style. So I really like that story there because they're pushing Roman Reigns' buttons. And the question, Dimitri, that I'm posing, shouldn't we actually be teasing dissension among the three to sell the point of Roman loses the belt without getting pinned because these guys hate each other as much as him? Or do you like the idea that these three are on the same page and we're going to be buddies, and that's what's putting Roman at jeopardy? What do you think?
I think that, well, let's not forget this whole thing started with these guys trying to, like, struggling to even get their hands off each other just in their search for Roman.
Yep.
So it's not like the feud completely ignored that aspect of it. But I think that the beauty of not selling it too much going into the match is so that in the match, that's when the implosion does happen. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like, it reminds me of when Randy faced Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase at WrestleMania 26, 27,
26.
26, that's the one, where it was about like, oh, it doesn't matter which one of us wins, as long as you don't. But at the end of the day, you're going to see that these three wrestlers, as much as they care about getting revenge over Roman, they probably care more about winning the title themselves than they do about just someone else dethroning him. And I think that at the end of the day is what's going to stop the three challengers from being able to get it completely over the tribal chief.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough. For me, potentially that's the visual that's going to end the go-home show of SmackDown, that the three of them can't get along. So maybe this is just kind of like, subverting expectations. But needless to say, in this main event, Jimmy Uso is a great heel, Solo is a great heel, but neither of them is quite at the level of main event world champion status. And it is really showing that SmackDown is weak on that heel side at the top of the card. But anyway, that's my final comment for the SmackDown review, and I'll hand over to you for the Raw side.
Well, now let's move on to the red side of things, and we're going to start off with the segment between Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre, which opened the show, and this was an interesting little discussion between the two wrestlers. Drew McIntyre obviously is on his way to being a heel, but he's still recognizing his respect in Cody here, sort of acknowledging that they've had very similar career paths and having to leave WWE to find their way, build up their worth, and then get back. And I thought this was an interesting confrontation, especially heading into the Royal Rumble, and the way they closed it by acknowledging the last time they wrestled each other, which was before Drew came back to WWE. And Cody sort of just gave him a reminder saying, well, who won that match? So what did you think of this as an opening segment?
I really liked the interaction, and I actually had a taken aback moment because WWE never refers to wrestlers' careers outside of WWE. It's like you're released and you're in a void, or you are signed, and it means you've just emerged from the womb. So the fact that they did this was really, really cool for me. That was my highlight of the segment, frankly.
And I felt like from one strong opening promo segment, they went into a very strong match with JD McDonough and Dominic Mysterio facing DIY. And I think on the surface of it, you'd think to yourself, does this match need as much time as it received? But I thought it was a really good way, and they kept going, and it really showcased a lot of their talent within the ring. And I thought this was a really good way to open the show in terms of matches. And other notable highlights on Raw, So Chelsea Green and Piper Niven faced Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae, with LeRae and Hartwell getting the win. Gunther returned after a couple of weeks out and said he's going to win the Rumble main event WrestleMania. Xavier Woods interrupted Gunther's review of Kaiser in his absence, and Woods asked for a match against Ludwig Kaiser to get revenge for him injuring Kofi. And in the match, it ended with a DQ, with Woods throwing the desk chair at Ludwig Kaiser, and this led to a brawl afterwards. Following that, Akira Tozawa got an upset win over Ivar with a sunset flip powerbomb. Very surprising. And this was followed by another notable promo segment, which saw Rhea Ripley get confronted by Becky Lynch. Obviously, Thanasi, this is probably the marquee Raw women's match we've been waiting for a long time. And in the segment, Becky sort of acknowledges that she might not be as good as Rhea Ripley. And she's afraid that that might be the case, but she needs to prove herself wrong, prove her own doubts false by winning the Rumble and facing Ripley at Mania. So this is sort of sowing the seeds for that potential match. Last week, it was Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax being teased. So how do you think things stand right now in the women's division?
To be quite honest with you, I think the best match that they can do, and the one that they will do, is Becky Lynch versus Rhea Ripley. And you predicted it actually in our year opening podcast episode. But I think you're right in that this is going to be Becky Lynch putting over Rhea Ripley and really cementing her as that prime level main event star, in a way that, frankly, only Becky Lynch can do, because she is the one that has been that franchise player level in the women's division in basically ever. Like, she's the only one you could compare to that John Cena level of popularity of just white hot. She had her Daniel Bryan moment at WrestleMania 35, and if she can put over Rhea Ripley, it's going to be a massive nod to her.
After that exchange, there was a tag match between Miz and R-Truth versus Damian Priest and Finn Balor. This was a bit of another little comedy match, sort of interspersed into a very serious storyline with R-Truth still trying to win favor in the Judgment Day, still believing he's in the Judgment Day. And Damian Priest, I think, probably broke his heart when he had to give him a South of Heaven choke slam to allow Balor to get the pinfall win. And this was followed by a Shinsuke Nakamura video where he sort of explained that his story with Cody isn't quite over just yet, but he's now turning his attention to the Rumble. And this had me immediately thinking that those two are going to have some sort of spot within the Rumble. Whether that is a surprise Nakamura elimination of Cody Rhodes or whether Cody Rhodes eliminates Nakamura, who knows? But we'll see how that transpires, how that goes. Following that, we had Tegan Nox and Natalya face Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark, with Baszler making Natalya tap. And the show concluded with, and I can't believe I'm saying this in 2024, but a World Heavyweight Championship match between Seth Rollins and Jinder Mahal. And I have to say, obviously Jinder Mahal isn't the most skilled wrestler within the ring, but I felt like with a guy like Seth Rollins as his dance partner, he did a really good job here.
Oh, good for him. I think it was, a nice little showing for him. It's a nice reward for having such a good segment with The Rock last week or the week before, whenever it was. So look, good for him. I don't appreciate, the full hype up that, we should be wanting Mahal to be world champion. I wouldn't go quite that far, even sarcastically. But it's been a nice little fun step along the way towards the Royal Rumble.
I think we have Tony Khan to blame for that, for putting such a focus on it. Like if he didn't say anything, I think people would have been really down on this match. But his antics sort of made people, ironically, very interested in seeing it. And I have to say that the spot when obviously, for those who didn't see, Damian Priest came out sort of mid-match to sort of like circle the ring and sort of just be like a coiled viper and ready to strike when he's ready. And that sort of led to some little distractions, but Drew McIntyre came out to sort of take care of him. And the sort of kerfuffle being caused by that allowed Jinder and his two men in Indus Sher and Veer Mahan to sort of give him opportunities to sort of get those heelish wins over Seth Rollins. So one of those times they managed to land a cheap shot on Rollins, and Jinder actually hit the champ with Roddy Strong's finisher. I'm not sure if you noticed that. I said for a 2 count.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
End of
then
heartache.
yeah. And then there was another distraction which allowed one of them to throw in a chair. And as the ref threw away the chair, Jinder was handed the briefcase, hit Rollins with it, and hit his Colossus finisher. And I have to say, at this moment, I was terrified. And I was like, okay, they did get me. I didn't like I still didn't think it was going to win, but I thought that was a good spot. And then obviously Rollins eventually managed to retain with his curb stomp. But I just thought an interesting way to start to finish Raw, and yet I still feel the most interesting item coming out of Raw is the proposition of Cody Rhodes going face to face with CM Punk next week, and it's seemingly it's going to be them sort of addressing their ongoing battle and their ongoing stories going into the Royal Rumble. But what do you think these guys have to say to each other at this stage?
Are they going to talk about, frankly, their stories? They both want to complete their stories. They both, well, one really, really wants to be world champion. Another one really, really wants to main event WrestleMania. And frankly, those two goals are not mutually exclusive because they can happen in the same match if they go head to head. So they can tease that. But also, they're not mutually exclusive because we have two world title belts, which means that they can both main event WrestleMania this year, or so they can say. Um, but I think because we've had week by week, we've had various single stars that don't always necessarily interact with each other, have these in-ring promo segments to tease out the Royal Rumble. So I think this is just the climax of those. It's the two people that we consider to be the real favorites to win the Rumble.
Quick final question. Do they reference AEW in any way while they're in the ring?
Oh, they can do it in a roundabout way, but I think this promo sells itself even without that angle, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, speaking of AEW, let's go on to discussing Collision. So, Thanasi, what happened on Collision?
Well, the show opened up with the Cope Open Challenge, or should I say the Aries Open Challenge, in the vein of Percy Jackson on Disney Plus. Adam Copeland makes Lee Moriarty tap out to the crossface. So he's really easing into that role that I spoke about last week about just giving the young guns a chance. And then the Mogul Embassy successfully defended the Ring of Honor six-man tag titles against Dutch, Vincent, and Lance Archer, and they call out Bullet Club Gold. And it looks, as you're going to tell us on Dynamite, as this is the new ROH six-man program. Before we get to the Dynamite outcome, because you and I both know what the outcome is, what are your thoughts about this idea in principle of putting these three guys in trios or six-man action while Juice Robinson is out? These three guys obviously referring to Bullet Club Gold, is who I mean.
We're talking about Jay White and the Guns right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, to be honest, I feel like it is a bit of a waste of their talents because Juice Robinson is a star in his own right. He was not the linchpin for them achieving their own goals, which is tag team gold and world title gold. So the fact that he's out and it feels like, oh crap, we've got to pull these guys together now and let them work together. It kind of feels like it's counterproductive to what they want to do as talent. And I just think the AEW Trios Championships are not things that they're aspiring to win right now.
Well, that's fair enough. Look, I think we're better off getting them to do something and having them in some kind of a program, I think is what's important. But I agree with you that it is a slight fall from grace for Jay White, who was formerly a number one contender, had a world title match in November. In December, he was still in the semifinals of the AEW's new premier tournament. So now this is another step down for him. Continuing on with the Collision review, Dustin Rhodes defeated Willie Mack. Hangman Adam Page defeated JD Drake from the Workhorsemen. And then Deonna Purrazzo makes her debut defeating Red Velvet. And Schiavone kept calling her Pulazzo, which was an incorrect name that the heels kept referring to her as, but it just stuck with him for some reason because he made one reference and then couldn't get it out of his head. She has got Perazzo, that is. She has got her eyes set on Mariah May and Tony Storm and their unholy union. And that is something that I've been thinking about. I mean, I've been thinking about those two a lot lately
I'm sure you
because
have.
I have an idea of where to take the story. If you'll indulge me here, I want to do another fantasy book here. I mean, I'm in the mood for, fantasy booking women's world titles this week. So I'll get straight to the crux of it. Mariah May should be the one to take the strap off of Tony Storm, ideally at Wembley. But on the way there, this is my idea of how we give her a trial run, basically to see, should we abort? Can she hold up as a champion, right? Both, using kayfabe as a way to test her out. And I think the way to test the water should be that she should win the TBS title and start doing open challenges on television. And this would be a symbolic rivalry of the cinematic world champion of classic cinema and the modern television champion on the other side of the corner. And if she's defending weekly, trying to get the attention of Tony Storm, eventually she can snap and just declare herself the true elite champion in AEW. Say, cinema has fallen back. Your time is gone. Your time is past. There's a lot of timey kind of puns that we can use here for her snap promo. And basically, when she comes to this climax, she can just absolutely just maul Tony Storm in the center of the ring. Call her weak, unappreciative, call her decadent, just like the golden era of Hollywood, getting too big for her britches. And then at Wembley, she can unseat her in a winner-takes-all match, bringing a 21st century end to the golden era of cinema. So if she's pulling it off correctly, the idea is to get this TBS women's title on the same level as what the ECW television title was in the late 90s and early 2000s, where it was rivaling the world title. And in fact, that didn't diminish the world title at all. It just made people want to see the two champions come head to head. So that's what I'm booking. A winner takes all at Wembley would be the climax of this. What do you reckon?
I really like it. I think I really love the idea of that first winner takes all match happening with the women's titles because it would just feel grand, especially now. Because it would also probably be a subversion in the sense that you would expect that, if at all, to happen, to be with the TNT and the AEW World Championships. So the idea of doing it first with the women's instead, I actually really like.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for that good feedback.
Yeah.
I will just continue on to the end of the show then, because that was the big talking point that I wanted to share with everyone today. So Hook in the Night won a squash ahead of his world title match on Dynamite. The House of Black then took on Danny Garcia and FTR in trios action. Danny was on Showcase, even going so far as to hold off all three of his dark opponents at one point at the same time. He was even involved in a Steiner-esque electric chair bulldog spot. And this was thoroughly enjoyable, fast-paced action with actual wrestling moves. And the House of Black won with the stomp by Matthews, but it was a nice little contest. I mean, yet again, we have multi-man matches to finish Collision. So again, slight house show vibes. It's a bit disappointing, but it was a good contest. I will give it to them on this occasion. But yeah, back to you, Dimitri, for the Dynamite stuff, because we have a lot of overhang. We've got Hook, we've got BCG coming out of that. So take us through it, why don't you?
Indeed, we do. Well, let's start off with our discussion on Dynamite with the opening contest, which was Christian Cage versus Dustin Rhodes for the TNT Championship. And I have to say, straight off the bat, I find it amazing and also slightly concerning that one of the, in my opinion, better matches in recent weeks on TV is being contested between a near 50-year-old and a mid-50s man.
Combined age of nearly 100.
Yeah, but and these are guys that were doing it on a regular 20 years ago, back in WWE. But it's just, I thought it was a really solid match, and I really appreciated some spots, which included the a superplex by Dustin Rhodes that transitioned immediately into a crossroads, which got a very good pop out of the AEW crowd, and that was for a very near fall. And likewise, another really close near fall was when Christian Cage hit his spear and kill switch combo, and that the kick out from Dustin Rhodes, I think, really got a nice reaction out of the crowd, including me, just as a spectator watching on TV. And eventually, Christian finished off the match with a second kill switch. But I just thought this was a really good way to open the night. And there, any good championship reign, you need filler defenses that also feel good. And this felt to me exactly in that, like it fits that description to a T. And then after that, we had Orange Cassidy and Trent Beretta versus Penta and Commander, which was kind of, to be honest, for me, it was kind of like a nothing match. Nothing. It's not that they did badly, but just didn't feel like it was advancing anything really. And I think it was clear that it wasn't advancing anything because Roddy Strong had to come out and basically just call Cassidy a coward for not defending his title. And when Cassidy said, "Oh, all right, well, let's go for it," he said, "No, no, no. You know what? Let's wrestle each other at Revolution for the international championship." And I find it hilarious that the first official match confirmed is Roddy Strong versus Orange Cassidy for the international championship. So they're giving this heaps of build. They're really going to try and make it a big deal. And I actually think Roddy might win it. But obviously, we'll wait to see how it goes.
I think that would be nice. And look, I mean, I thought of it from the positive side that it's great that we're getting a match with 6 weeks of build, right? I think that's fantastic. Yeah, sure, it's like a tertiary strap, but I still liked it, to be honest.
After that, we had a very heartfelt moment with Mark Briscoe giving a really nice speech on the 1 year anniversary of his brother's untimely death. And there was a really nice moment where he mentioned that his eldest niece was told that she would never walk again after the car accident. But then she, along with her siblings, came out on her own 2 feet at the rampway. And that was a really nice moment, I think. And it's something I think AEW does well in having a bit of like a lot of respect and love for the talent that have worked there. Like obviously every company has their moments, but like in these moments of crisis with this unfortunate death, and then obviously with Brody Lee,
Yeah,
like they've done a really good job of trying to keep them in the memory.
here, here.
And then from that we go to a very cartoonish Young Bucks segment with Renee Paquette. And they're embracing the EVP gimmick now, apparently. They're basically saying we are the top shit.
Look, I wasn't a big fan of this segment, and I think the reason I wasn't a big fan of this segment was because of Nick Jackson's mustache. It's horrendous. At least Matt has got the soul patch going on, so there's a bit of I don't know, there's a sense of completeness there. Whereas you look at Matt, it's just like a toothbrush mustache, and I'm just getting Barty Crouch Jr. vibes, or a senior, Barty Crouch Senior vibes from the book. But yeah, we have to refer to them by their Christian names, Matthew and Nicholas.
Uh,
Get out of here.
to be honest, I found it very amusing, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm the I'll add it in now. Later on, there was a video package with Darby Allin saying that the end goal is now for him and Sting to win the titles. And the thing that concerns me is that, say they win the titles before Revolution and they face the Young Bucks, do they put the Young Bucks over? Because I don't think they really need it.
Well, we talked about this last week. If you're going to put someone over, it should not be the Young Bucks. It should be someone else that actually deserves the rub, of saying, I defeated Sting in his last match. Because then the alternative is that Darby Allin and Sting win, they go out on top and then relinquish the straps, and it just makes the division look weak.
Yeah, so I'm really not sure how all that's going to go. But we'll watch and find out. Following that, we had the match between Bullet Club Gold and Mogul Embassy for the Ring of Honor Trios Championships, with Bullet Club Gold actually winning. So good for them, good momentum. But I do, again, I mentioned in the Collision review, I'm kind of not that bothered about seeing them as the as the Ring of Honor Trios champions. And it kind of feels like that those titles are just changed every so often. Doesn't feel like a lot of stories put towards it, all of that you really care on AEW programming either. I think if that's going to happen, you'd rather see it on Ring of Honor programming. But after that, we had Diana Purazzo, not Pulazzo, wrestle Anna Jay, and she with Purazzo winning via submission. And then we had the return of Private Party after more than a year out of facing Top Flight, and they managed to get a win in kind of heelish fashion with a roll up and then assistance from the ropes. And then the show closed with Hook versus Samoa Joe for the AEW World Championship. Now, this was in many ways kind of like a mauling at the hands of Samoa Joe. I wrote down a note here which really got to me. There was a very vicious uranagi by Joe on Hook onto the announce table. And the way it snapped, it just looked incredibly painful. And I was actually very concerned for the guy. And it didn't help that it was followed up immediately by a power bomb on the ring apron, very much a Kevin Owens style maneuver there. And I made a mention here of there was a 9 count while Hook was out on the outside. And for to count to 9, it took the referee 43 seconds. Now
Oh,
I understand the 10 count isn't literally 10 seconds,
that's right. It's not 10 seconds. It's a count of 10.
but I found it amusing that it's like it was giving him as much of a chance as possible to get back in, which he did. And then, and I'm really curious for your opinion on this. Joe hit a muscle buster, which is obviously his main finisher in terms of winning matches via pinfall. And Hook kicked out at 1. Now, this obviously got a huge reaction out of the fans. I don't know about you. I'm not a big fan of wrestlers kicking out at 1 for major finishes unless it's a Kenny Omega style kicking out of my own move being used against me. I like the idea of like if it's my own move, I have this weird superpower, I'm not going to let it out. But when it's the muscle buster and you've just been uranagied onto with the announce table and powerbombed on the ring apron, and then finally it's a muscle buster, it's kind of like maybe respect Joe's finisher enough to kick out at 2. You know what I mean?
Well, see, the thing is, my view is that if someone's going to kick out of 1, it's probably been agreed beforehand.
Oh yeah,
And I just wonder, like, under what circumstances, like, Joe is a good sport, right? He's a great team player. But this is one where he should have pushed back and be like, no, I'm not gonna let you kick out of the muscle buster at 1. This is the move that ended the career of Tyson Kidd. Let's at least respect it as something very, very vicious and dangerous. I'm reminded a little bit. Do you remember when Chris Hero, Cassius Ono, got released from NXT the first time? On the indie scene, he used to tell his opponents, hit me with a pedigree so that he could kick out at 1 as a way of saying, well, F you, Triple H, for sacking me. That was something that at least was bloody funny, right? This one, unacceptable. Unacceptable. I can't endorse it at all.
yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that felt that way because sometimes it's hard when the reaction from the crowd is so in favor. Sometimes it makes you feel a bit
Makes you
invalidated.
question
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of that. I feel like I said, like when Omega does it after getting hit with the one-winged angel, his own move, I kind of get it. And like storyline wise, it makes more sense to me than it does there. But Joe did eventually get the win via knockout with the Coquina clutch, and it was an arm drop 3 times knockout win. Which I was
How
so
good.
yeah,
How
I'm just
good.
like fantastic. I'm like keep it up, I really like that. But that closed Dynamite. Right after the match, Adam Page sort of came in to stop Joe from beating down even further on Hook, and Swerve Strickland just watched from from the ring side
From
area,
the
from the
shadows.
yes, just from the which I thought was quite amusing as well. But yeah, that was Dynamite. What did you think of it overall?
Look, overall, I think all 4 of the television programs, in my perspective, at this point, they've still got like silly season vibes. We haven't quite hit off, even though there's a lot of opportunities to go very hard and very deep into the storylines. Perhaps they're just waiting for everyone to, get through January, come back from work, and really be ready to sink their teeth into some wrestling after their leave finishes up or something like that.
Yeah. See, I don't mind it, and I think once we get past the Rumble, things are really gonna heat up, especially with the Revolution coming up for AEW
Mm.
and with WrestleMania season. I mean, look, it's a very exciting time. It's the best time of year, I'd say, for wrestling fans. And okay, well, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of the Audible Finish. But next week, we will review the go home shows of WWE leading into the Royal Rumble pay per view, as well as give our predictions for what we think is going to happen at the show. Thanasi, great to have your company as always.
Great to be here. Thanks for another nice episode.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Until next time, we hope everything you do is just too sweet.